Hey guys, what's up, it's Austin and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going through my makeup collection and decluttering some things that I'm not using anymore. You know, just picking out some things that I haven't been able to show enough love to and passing them on to someone new. So instead of some of these products just sitting in my collection and not getting used, I'd rather pass them on to someone else so they can be used and loved. Otherwise they're just going to go bad in my collection, you know? Alright, starting off, this is a clear makeup organizer. I actually ordered this one off of Amazon, so I'll have that link down below in the description so you can check that out. As you can see, I keep my setting sprays on top, and then I have some liquid lipsticks right here. Starting off with setting spray, this is the Flower Beauty Seal the Deal Long Lasting Setting Spray. This one is pretty good for obviously making your makeup last. I'm actually almost out of it, so I am going to hang on to it and use it up. That way I can throw it in an empties video. The Catrice Prime and Fine and the e.l.f. Matte Magic Setting Spray, both of these are pretty good for making your makeup last pretty long as well. I always use setting spray when I do my makeup, so I'm definitely going to be hanging on to these two. Alright, now moving on to the Tatcha Luminous Dewy Skin Mist. I don't ever reach for this. The only time I ever reach for this is when I'm using it underneath makeup, but honestly I just use my skincare and my oils and then just go in for a primer. So I honestly think I'm just going to pass this on to someone else. And of course the MAC Fix Plus. I have the travel size in this. I usually just use this to wet my makeup brushes, so I'll definitely hang on to this as well. As far as these liquid lipsticks, I think I'm actually going to keep all of them. No, that doesn't really sound like I'm decluttering much, but you know. All of my Jeffree Star lipsticks, I really like these. Pretty great formula if you're looking for a liquid lipstick. Also, Sugar Pill has a pretty good liquid lipstick line as well. Pretty great formula, not too drying on the lips. Alright, I have two lip glosses from Dose of Colors. Honestly, these aren't my favorite. I really like the color of this one. This is the shade Can You Not, so I'll probably actually hang on to this one. But the lip gloss formula is a little too thick and a little too sticky for me. I like a good lip gloss that won't like create the strings on your mouth when you're like talking and stuff. So if you do happen to use these, you know, just go in for a light layer rather than like loading that shit on. With that being said, I am going to pass on the more pink shade called On Repeat, and I'm going to keep the Can You Not lighter shade. This is just typically the more brownie nude types of glosses that I'll reach for. I'm gonna hang on to this Hank and Henry liquid lipstick. This is the shade Petal Pusher. It also smells like cake, which is my favorite part about it. I don't have any of these like coral shades as far as lipstick, so this is my only one, so I'm gonna hang on to it for that reason. I'm also going to hang on to this Dose of Colors liquid lipstick in the shade Truffle. These two right here are a pretty good combo as far as Dose of Colors lip products go. Next I have this Tristique Prime and Color Lip Glaze. It has the, you know, lip glaze on one end, and then it has a lip primer on the other. Honestly, I find the lip primer to be a little too like stiff for a lip primer. It doesn't really hydrate the lips enough. Sorry about it. I honestly just never reach for this. I don't, you know, typically ever wear a red lipstick. If I do, I always go for my Jeffree Star one. So for that reason, I'm gonna pass this on to someone else. I also have this Mini Bite Beauty lipstick in the shade Chai. Honestly, I haven't reached for it in the amount of time that I've had it, so I'm just gonna pass it on since I haven't used it. Same thing goes with this Bite Crayon. I'm not really into the pinky shades as far as, you know, lip colors go, so I'm gonna pass this on as well. Almost forgot about this ColourPop Lippy Stick. These are pretty great. However, I've had this for about, I don't know, 6 to 8 months. And like, the thing just falls right out of the tube. I'm not really into that. I'm gonna need products that gonna hold together. Come on, ColourPop. We need to get our shit together. So, personally, I wouldn't buy these just knowing that they're gonna fall out of the tube. Even though it's falling out of the tube, the formula is still pretty emollient, so it'll still definitely work on the lips. I'm actually going to throw this one out. Alright, moving on to some concealers. I have the Too Faced Born This Way Multi-Use Sculpting Concealer. I use this every now and then. It's a pretty great formula, however, this one does crease under my eyes. I know it doesn't crease for a lot of people, but for some reason this one does. So I usually just reach for this one to put on the chin or the forehead, but I don't really put this one underneath the eyes. The ColourPop No Filter Concealer, it's pretty great as well. The shade is a little too light for me, so I may like put it aside for that reason. However, I do like to use this one for an eyeshadow base if I'm not using my P. Louise base, so I could keep it, you know, for that as well. As far as the Flower Beauty Concealer, this is a really nice concealer. It's very hydrating underneath the eye, so I definitely recommend this for anyone with dry skin. For my oily skin, it does crease underneath my eye, so I tend to layer this with another concealer that won't crease. And I am going to hang on to that. Up next, I have the Tarte Shape Tape. This is a very loved concealer across the beauty community, and it is pretty great. It's very full coverage. It's definitely going to conceal anything that you need it to conceal. The only problem I have with this one is that it accentuates the texture bumps underneath my eyes, but other than that, it is a pretty great concealer, so I am going to hang on to that for now. Up next, I have the e.l.f. 16 Hour Camo Concealer. Honestly, this is a pretty great concealer if you're looking for... Honestly, this is a pretty great dupe for the Tarte Shape Tape Concealer. It's got a pretty big doe foot applicator as well. I find that this one still gives me full coverage, but it doesn't emphasize the texture underneath my eyes like the Tarte Shape Tape does. So I'd honestly reach for this one over my Tarte Shape Tape. The one I'm going to be getting rid of is the NYX HD Studio Concealer. I've used one of these up in the past and it wasn't terrible. However, I just reached for all of these other concealers and I haven't actually opened this one at all. So for that reason, I'm going to pass it along. It does look like it's separating a little bit in the tube, so I'll definitely check that out before actually passing it along. It may be expired. It does say 6 months on the tube, so I'll actually probably throw this one out. In this drawer, I keep majority of brow products. First one on top is the e.l.f. brow pencil. I honestly prefer the Ultra Profine brow pencil. I actually have that in my everyday makeup bag. Honestly, it's just too thick to get a precise brow with. For that reason, I'm going to be either passing this on or just getting rid of it altogether since it's only like $2. Up next, I have the Joa Brow Down to Me in the shade Brunette. This is a super precise brow pencil that's not going to be too waxy on the brows. It does have a pretty good longevity as well for a drugstore brow pencil. It also has a spoolie on the other end. It's only a couple bucks and you can pick this up at CVS, which is where I got it. Pretty great drugstore brow pencil if you're looking for something on the more affordable side. Up next, I have the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Definer. I've actually used all of this up and it won't go out anymore. So I'm going to be throwing that out. And of course, we have the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Wiz. This is definitely one of the best brow pencils on the market. It is a little more expensive, around the $21 range. But again, it still is pretty good. I'm going to be keeping this. Also have the Anastasia Beverly Hills Dip Brow Pomade. Honestly, don't reach for pomades that much. I usually prefer a brow pencil. However, I still want to keep this on hand if I'm feeling like I literally want to paint in the brows. You know what I mean? Up next in here, I have the Maybelline Great Lash Clear Mascara. Honestly, I used to use this to set my brows. I never really used it as clear mascara. It is a pretty good brow gel. The only thing I do want to mention is that this wand picks up a lot of product. So just be sure to wipe it off on your hand. That way you literally don't have wet brows. Next in here I have the Bang Beauty. This is a gel liner in the shade Chocolate. Honestly, I've never used this. I'm not really into gel liners that much. So I'm definitely going to be passing this on to someone else. Alright, up next is primers. Up first we have the Benefit Professional. I actually like to use this on more porous areas of my face rather than an all-over primer, so I am going to keep this for that reason only. Up next I have the Milani Prime Shield Primer. Honestly, I'm definitely going to be getting rid of this because it's literally like silicone in a tube. It makes your skin feel greasy and oily, and honestly when I layer foundations on top of this, they don't grip to my face. They end up sliding off throughout the day, so I'm going to be getting rid of this primer. Up next I have two Flower Beauty primers. This is the Illuminating Primer and the Hydrating Primer. Honestly, both of these are pretty amazing. The Illuminating Primer is what I would use for if I'm going for a more dewy complexion that day, and on a more everyday note, I like to use the Hydrating Primer just to make sure that my skin is hydrated. Alright, down here I just have some miscellaneous items. I have the Benefit Boing Concealer. If you guys watched any of my first videos, I used to use this all over the nose as an extra barrier between my foundation. It did work pretty good for that. I honestly don't use it anymore. I've used quite a bit of it, like it's almost hitting pan. And there's some hair and stuff in here. So I'm definitely not going to be passing it on to anyone else, so I think I'm just going to throw it away. Up next I have this Over Highlighter in the shade Rodeo Drive. I honestly haven't used this other than swatching it. Honestly, a lot of people love this highlighter. It's just a little too golden for my skin tone. So I'm going to pass this on to someone with more of a medium or deeper complexion than I'd have. Up next I have the Cover FX Glitter Drop. I think I actually got this in a BoxyCharm about, I would say 6 to 8 months ago, and I literally haven't used it, so I'm definitely going to be passing this on to someone else. I feel like these are better for an all over body glow rather than just using them for a liquid highlighter. I think they actually have highlighting drops instead. This would be way too dark for my skin tone, as you can see there. But honestly, if you blend it out all over the skin, the tint kind of disappears and you just have the glitter left. Also have a couple glitters from Star Crush Minerals. This is the shade Electric Cloud. I like to use this for cut creases. Also have the shade Champagne Wishes, and I think this one is in the shade Enticing. I honestly hardly ever reach for glitters. I usually just go for like a pressed glitter in an eyeshadow palette rather than like loose glitter like this. However, I still am going to hang on to these just because if they're in my possession, I won't use them and they're not hurting the environment at least. You know what I mean? Alright, a little bit of a controversial topic. I actually did buy the Jaclyn Hill New Mood Lipstick Trio. I actually haven't used any of them. Could be totally fine to use, however, there's been a huge scandal about it, so I'm not going to be using them, and I'm not going to pass them on so someone else can use them. Sorry about it. Alright, we got more lip products right here. Most of these are glosses. I have a couple lipsticks and a couple liquid lipsticks up here as well. Starting off with glosses, I have this Tarte lip paint. This is more like a red toned lip gloss with purple and blue glitter in it. Like I said before, I don't really like super thick lip glosses, so I'm going to be passing this on to someone else. Same goes for the Morphe Flower Crown. I know I used it in a previous video. It's just too thick for my liking. I really love the color and it blends in nicely with other liquid lipsticks. It's just too much of a thick, sticky formula for me to hang on to if that's not something that I absolutely love. Up next we have the Joa Mirror Mirror Lip Gloss. Honestly, you guys, this is one of my favorite lip glosses ever. It's just a basic clear lip gloss, but it gives a velvet finish on the lips. Almost like you're not wearing anything at all, but it still gives you that super shiny glossy look on the lips. So I really recommend this. It's literally like $3 at CVS. Also highly recommend the e.l.f. lip lacquer. It's pretty great as well. Very similar to the Joa one. Up next I have the Smashbox Brains and Bronze. This is like a metallic, it's called a Legendary Liquid Metal. I honestly never reach for metallic lipsticks like that, so I'm just going to pass it on to someone else. Honestly, same goes for this Ofra liquid lipstick in the shade Monaco. I'm sure it would be very pretty on the lips, but I haven't used it in the time that I've had it. I just don't think I ever am going to use it. Alright, I have this Ofra liquid lipstick in the shade Verona. Pretty sure I got this in a BoxyCharm as well. I really love this nude color. I always go for these like brownie nudes. This is more on the brown side rather than a nude shade that I would use. However, it is a pretty nice liquid lipstick, so I am going to hang on to this one. Same goes for this Morphe one. It is more on the pink tone, but I am going to keep it because the formula is pretty great. This one also smells like cake, which is pretty awesome. Up next I have a Color Rain liquid lipstick in the shade Mars. I really do like the color of it. It is this one right here. However, these are pretty drying on my lips. I'm not sure if it's just my lips or the formula or what it is, but these like crack my lips to shit. So I'm going to pass this on and maybe someone else will be able to use it. As far as these lipsticks right here, I have the L'Oreal Masterpiece. It's like a pinky nude shade. I also have the MAC Lip Tensity in the shade Dough. It's more on the brownie nude shade as well. Then I have the Katy Perry CoverGirl Sphinx lipstick. Honestly, all of these are pretty great formulas if you're looking for a lipstick. And then last but not least on the lipsticks, this is the Morphe matte lipstick in the shade Wifey. Honestly, these Morphe lipsticks aren't the best. I do find them to be a little drying on the lips, but they do have great pigmentation and great color. It may just be my lips. You know, my lips are always dry regardless. So I am going to hang on to this because it is a beautiful color. Other than that, I would recommend one of the other three as well. Honestly, if you're looking for a go-to, I would definitely go with the L'Oreal Color Riche lipsticks. These are definitely my favorite lipstick from the drugstore. I do have a couple more lip glosses right down here. I'm actually going to keep the ColourPop Ultra Glossy Lip in the shade Berry Floss. Not too sticky on the lips and it blends in nicely with a lot of my lipsticks, so I am going to hang on to this one. These two I'm going to be getting rid of. This is the Appeal Holographic Lip Gloss and the Steve Laurent Lip Gloss in the shade Posh. Honestly, this is a beautiful shade, the lip gloss. It's not too sticky on the lips, and it's got great pigmentation. However, this one literally smells like Vaseline. Like, I have plenty of Vaseline for the lips. It like almost smells like cake batter, but it smells closer to like the cocoa butter of the Vaseline. Literally smells exactly like this. And it's honestly kind of a turnoff for me in a lip gloss form. And if I'm going to reach for something with glitter in it, I'm going to reach for my Fenty Beauty Gloss Bomb over this, so no reason for me to have this. I'm going to pass it on as well. Moving over here, I have the LA Girl Pro Conceal Concealer. I actually picked up the shade Toast to use as a cream bronzer. However, it doesn't really blend out that great on my skin. I've seen other people on YouTube use this a lot, and it just seems to like blend over their skin super nicely. On this one, I don't know what is the issue, but it doesn't blend out on my skin. I'm going to keep it a little longer to see if I can mix in some beauty oils to see if I can get it to blend easier that way. Although I may end up decluttering this in the future. And I just have my Anastasia Clear Brow Gel. I honestly reached for my e.l.f. Tinted Brow Gel over this one, but it is a pretty good brow gel. Again, with the spoolie, it does pick up a lot of product, so I would just make sure to wipe it off on the hand. Moving back up here, I have the Touch in Sol No Pore Bone Primer. This honestly isn't my favorite. It gives you more of that silicone-y feel on the face. It honestly just doesn't feel in my pores that great, and it causes my foundations to lift up as well, so I'm going to pass this on to someone else who may be able to use it. I'm going to keep all my Vaselines just because I have dry as fuck lips. Honestly, if you're looking for a good Vaseline lip therapy, I would always go for the ones in these tins. For whatever reason, they're smoother on the lips than the same ones that are in these little canisters. Moving on down here, I have some powder products. I'm definitely going to be keeping my Hoola Light. I absolutely love this bronzer. Very great shade for anyone with light skin tones. This is a Pretty Vulgar highlight in the shade Shimmering Swan. This is way too dark for me. I actually got this in a BoxyCharm. Every time I've tried to use this or swatch this on my skin, it just gives me like that gray cast. So for that reason, I'm just going to pass this on to someone else. Up next, we have the Wet n Wild highlighters. Honestly, any shades of these are really amazing. This is more of the pinky shade. I took off the sticker on the back, so I'm not sure what it's called. This is a beautiful blinding highlight for a very low price at the drugstore. So that is definitely a great recommendation for sure. Up next, I have the Wet n Wild Color Icon blushes. These are great affordable blushes. However, I am only going to keep the more pink shade. I honestly don't ever reach for the apricot shade, which is this one right here, so I'm going to pass it on to someone else. In here I also have the Maybelline Matte and Poreless Pressed Powder. This is a pretty good pressed powder formula if you like to set your foundations with this or take this on the road to use as like a mattifying powder. You could also probably pick up like a deeper shade and use this as a bronzer. The formula is very finely milled, feels very nice and smooth on the skin. In here I also have the Benefit Dandelion Twinkle Highlighter. I mentioned this in my last video. Benefit is more on the expensive side, so I would definitely just pick up a Wet n Wild highlighter, and they work just as well. Alright, these are all of my lip liners. I have a couple from Morphe that I'm definitely going to be keeping. I have a pretty good lip liner formula. This lip liner right here from Dirty Little Secret. This is the shade Pale Pink. I actually got this in a BoxyCharm, and it's honestly too firm to use on the lips. So for that reason, I'm going to pass it on to someone else. Also have two of these JoA lip liners. Why I need two, I have no idea, but they are in the same shade. Both of them are the shade Pink Nude. I'm going to be hanging on to those. This is a Morphe liner in the shade Midnight. This is more of a gray toned liner. I like to put this in the waterline, so I'm going to hang on to that as well. All of these are the JCat liners. These are pretty good, smooth, creamy, but also like stiff formula. It's not too stiff, but stiff enough for it to stay in place all day, as well as not budge too much from the lips while you're eating, etc. I honestly ordered this whole pack off of Amazon. I think it was like $12 to $15 for like 10 to 12 liners. So pretty good formula. I would definitely recommend these. I'll also leave them linked down below as well. Alright, moving on down here, we have some more powder products. This Flower Beauty blush in the shade Sweet Pea is one of my all-time favorite blushes. And I also don't have many blushes, so I'm going to hang on to this for sure. I have this Wet n Wild Mega Glow Contouring Palette. I honestly have other bronzers and contours that I use over this one. However, this is a pretty decent formula. It is super powdery, but it is also very pigmented and blends out easy on the skin. This is in the shade Dulce de Leche. I'm going to be passing this on to someone else because, like I said, I have other things that I prefer over this. Also have the Milani Strobe Light Highlighters. This is in the shade Afterglow. Honestly, these are like super pigmented highlighters. Also a very good drugstore option as far as a highlighter goes. Would definitely recommend this one. I also have two of these ColourPop Super Shock Cheeks. This latter one is in the shade Flexitarian, and this one is in the shade Wisp. Honestly, Flexitarian is probably the only one that I can use. I like to use this one as an eyeshadow, but I honestly don't reach for it enough to use it, so I'm definitely going to be passing this on to someone else, probably with a deeper complexion than myself, so they can use it as a highlighter. Alright, moving on to my last acrylic organizer, and this one I keep things that will go on the eyes, things like lashes, have a couple liners, and some liquid eyeshadows in here. Up first we have the Ardell Wispies. You can get these at the drugstore. I just picked mine up at CVS. They're nice wispy lashes. The band on these lashes are super thin and very comfortable on the eyes. Also keep an additional Peelwees base in here. This is a really great eyeshadow base. Also have an extra duo lash glue in here. I actually prefer the one with the brush-on applicator, but you know, standard is good as well. These are a pair of Lashaholic lashes. I like my lashes to look thick, girl, and these just don't do it for me. But I do like the case, so I am going to keep the case. I've used the lashes a couple times, so I'll probably just throw them out. Moving on down, we have some House of Lashes in the style Iconic. These are probably my favorite lashes at the moment. I really love how wispy and thick the lashes are. They also have a pretty thick band, so you may need to like flex them out, if that makes sense. That way they'll shape to your eyes and not lift up throughout the day. Then I have two lashes from the Makeup Shack, one in the style Kaylani and the one in the style Nova. These Nova ones actually have like blue tips at the end of them, which are really cool and unique. I don't typically reach for these just because the lashes are pretty long, and if I'm wearing my glasses, they don't really like work out well for blinking sorts. So I typically don't reach for these, but they are nice to have for makeup looks. I really like these as well. Very similar to the House of Lashes. Very thick and wispy. The band is very nice as well. So if I'm not wearing my House of Lashes ones, I typically go for these in the style Kaylani from the Makeup Shack. I don't have a coupon code with the Makeup Shack, however, you can use code ROCIO. I'll put it up on the screen right here if you want to get money off of your lashes or anything else that the Makeup Geek carries. Alright, and moving on down into the lash drawer, this is where I keep all of my liquid eyeshadows. A lot of these down here are from Milani, and I'm actually going to be keeping all of my Milani ones. I really like this formula. I will say that they do have like a cooling effect on the eyes, which doesn't personally bother my eyes, but if you have sensitive eyes, I definitely wouldn't reach for these liquid eyeshadows. Up next, this liquid eyeshadow is from Appeal. I actually got this in a BoxyCharm, and this is in the shade Gold. Now, I don't typically reach for this one at all, just because I'm not really a fan of the brush applicator, while the other ones have like more of a doe foot. I just feel like it doesn't give enough coverage, and it actually lifts up the product underneath, which is kind of disappointing with this product, but it does have a nice reflect to it when it actually hits the light and when it's built up and dried down. I've had this for a while and I haven't reached for it at all, so I'm actually going to just declutter it because I'm not going to use it, so maybe someone else can. Up next, this is the Ciate London Eye Luster Cream Eyeshadow. I'm not really sure what shade this is because I did get it in a BoxyCharm and it doesn't have the sticker on the bottom of it. Honestly, like, if all of these cream eyeshadows were like that, that'd be bomb. It doesn't have any streakiness or anything. It's like a purple lavender base with some gold reflect in it. Look how beautiful that looks. Like, hi, how are ya? Honestly, I prefer this type of liquid eyeshadow over the Milani ones that I have. I also find that this one isn't as cooling as the Milani ones, so this one may be better for people that have more of sensitive eyes versus the Milani ones. So I am going to hang on to this one just because it is a pretty unique formula. Up next, we have the Wander Beauty Unleashed Mascara. I personally didn't really like this mascara. It just wasn't volumizing enough for me, and it also didn't keep my lashes curled throughout the day. So for that reason, I'm actually just going to go ahead and throw this one away because I have used it a couple times, and I don't want to pass it on to someone else for them to use it, especially when it deals with the eye area. Up next, I have the Morphe Gel Liner in the shade Stargazed. It's like a black liner with some glitter in it. I've had this for quite a while and it's okay. It's just not as emollient as I would like it to be, and I have other liners. I also prefer more of a pen liner versus like a gel pot that you would dip into. So I'm going to be passing that on to someone else. Up next in here, I have the Butter London Glazing Lustrous Liner. Honestly, this is just your standard black liner. I personally don't reach for this one because it does bleed quite a bit actually on the skin, and typically with an eyeliner you want it to stay in place and not bleed into the fine lines. For me personally, I want my liners to stay in place and not bleed at all costs. So for me, this is just a no-go, and I'm going to pass this on to someone else. And last but not least in here, I have the LA Girl Glide Gel Liner. This is in the shade Mermaid Blue. This is a very pretty blue liner. I like to use this in the waterline when I go for more blue looks. Alright you guys, last thing for me to go through is my palettes. I have some face palettes here, and then the rest are eyeshadows. So I'm going to start off with the face palettes. Up next I have the Cover FX Perfector Face Palette. This is what it looks like on the inside. Honestly, I don't really reach for this a ton, so I'm probably going to pass it on to someone else. This contour slash bronzer shade is a little too deep for me. I really do like this blush. It's very pretty. I don't personally like this finishing powder just because it does have some specks of glitter in it, and I don't really want glitter all over my face. These highlighters are nice. I personally can only get away with the pink one and this brightener shade right here. This golden shade on this side is a little too deep for my skin tone, so I'm only 3 out of 6 for these shades and this, so I'm actually going to pass it on to someone else who can get better use out of it. Up next we have the Alamard Cosmetics Colorette Blush Trio. This is in the shade medium to tan. Absolutely love these blushes. They blend out super nicely on the skin and they're not patchy at all. Formula is very creamy and not too powdery, so that helps it blend out very nicely. I do really like that the blushes have a little bit of a sheen. It just helps the skin look healthy and alive, you know what I mean? Whereas matte blushes can kind of take away that lifeness to the skin. So I really like these and I'm definitely going to be keeping them. Up next we have the Morphe Blush Palette. I am going to be hanging on to this just because of the different arrays of tones in this. Anywhere from lighter to deeper complexions, so for that reason I am going to keep it for my personal use. I personally go for the shades Sexy, It Girl, or Free, as well as this shade down here called Driven. This one has a little bit of a sheen to it, so I like to mix it into any of the top blushes that I just mentioned as well. Even though I only use half of these shades, I can still use them if I'm working on other people, so for that reason I am going to keep it. Another Morphe face palette here. This is the Highlight and Contour palette. This is the 8L palette. It's got a really big mirror, which I really like. It has 4 bronzer shades and then 4 highlighting shades. I still use this quite a bit, so I am going to hang on to it, and I can also use it on other people as well. Personally, for my skin tone, I usually go for Donut and Literati mixed. Donut is still a little too deep for my skin tone, but mixing it with Literati, which is this lighter shade here, really helps it blend together nicely on my skin. I don't really use the other 2 shades right here just because they're too deep for me. As far as the highlighters, these highlighters are very buttery and creamy on the skin. They're very nice highlighters. I really like them a lot. Alright, last but not least, we have the Kat Von D Shade and Light Contour Palette. This is one of the first face palettes I actually purchased, and then I pretty much soon regretted it after that. Honestly, none of these shades work for my skin tone. This shade right here in the middle is okay for my skin tone. It is still a little too deep, so when I did use it, I actually mixed it with this powder right here. Other than that, I just really haven't reached for it. I just don't use it enough to keep it around, so I am going to be passing it on to someone else. Alright, now that we have all of the face palettes out of the way, let's break down some of these eyeshadows because I definitely don't need to keep all of them. I'm going to be starting off with this Alamar Cosmetics palette. This is the Rihanna Del Caribe Volume 1 eyeshadow palette. This is what it looks like on the inside. I really do love all of these shades. I definitely think that these shadows go with the feel of the palette, if that makes sense. Sometimes you open up a palette and you're like, why are these colors in here? It doesn't fit the theme at all. I personally feel like these shadows fit this theme very nicely, especially with the flowers and green that we have going on. Alamar Cosmetics powders are super buttery, just like the blushes that I showed you guys earlier. These shimmer shades are very nice and pigmented as well. Very great eyeshadow palette. I want to hang on to this just because I absolutely love Gabby and I love supporting her brand, so for that reason I'm going to keep it. Up next we have the Pure Cosmetics Festival palette. I actually got this in a BoxyCharm. This is what the shades look like. I actually haven't opened it up. This palette just didn't speak to me enough for me to want to open it up or me to want to use it. I pretty much have all these shades in other palettes that I own, so for that reason I'm going to be passing it on and hopefully someone else can give it the love that it deserves. Up next we have the Nightingale Pretty Vulgar eyeshadow palette. Honestly just didn't really enjoy this color scheme. It honestly is kind of boring to me for my personal uses in an eyeshadow palette. You'll find that I have a lot of colorful eyeshadow palettes and that's pretty much what I prefer. These are also more cool toned and that's not really something that I go for. I will say that the shadows are very nice though. These shimmer shades are very pigmented. Even the mattes are pretty pigmented as well. Pretty great eyeshadow palette, just not for what I need in an eyeshadow palette, so I am going to be passing this on. Next we have the Anastasia Beverly Hills Soft Glam palette. This is one of my first like all-out neutral eyeshadow palettes, and I'm very happy with this purchase. This is one of my most used palettes that I have. I honestly reach for this one when I'm traveling. This is a great on-the-go like neutral eyeshadow palette, so I'm definitely going to be hanging on to this. This is also the only Anastasia Beverly Hills eyeshadow palette that I own, and honestly the only one that I feel the need to own. Sorry about it. Honestly, all of these eyeshadows are great. The shimmer shades are very buttery and smooth on the lids. I will say that the matte shadows have a little bit more fallout than other eyeshadow palettes that I use. However, I feel like that helps them blend out very nicely on the eyes, and I don't ever have any patchiness with these. I also just keep my brush taped in here for on-the-go purposes. That way, if I forget to grab any brushes, at least I'll have this one in here that I can do an eyeshadow look out of. Up next, we have the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. Honestly, the aesthetic of this palette is amazing. I love the visual graphics, you know, all of the pictures that are on here. They're really great and they really fit this palette as an on-the-go palette. It also has a fairly big mirror in here as well. When I bought this palette, I actually thought that I would use it a lot more than I did. Personally for me, it doesn't have enough brown tones in here. You see a lot of oranges, some pinks, some like cream shades, but you really only have 2 matte brown shades in here. The shade down here called Punk and this one called Rough. This one, Good As Gone, has a little bit more shimmer and a sheen to it, so it's not completely matte and it's got some glitter in it. For me, if I'm on the go, I prefer something like the Soft Glam palette where it's more neutrals and less of the colors. I also find that this one has too many of these shimmer shades. I would say over half of the palette is a shimmer shade, and for on the go, I would prefer more of them to be matte, or at least a half and half, if you feel me. So I honestly don't reach for this one as much as I would like to. So for that reason, I'm going to pass it on to someone else that can use it more than I can. Up next, we have the Tarte Rainforest of the Sea Volume 3 palette. I don't feel like this is necessary. Sorry about it. Like, it's just not. Honestly, there's only 1 matte shade, so I never reach for this, and I haven't since I got it in my BoxyCharm. So for that reason, I'm going to declutter this as well. Up next, we have the Ace Beauty Grandoise palette. I also got this in a BoxyCharm. I am going to be hanging on to this because I absolutely love these Ace Beauty shadows. They're very creamy, very buttery. Even the mattes blend out very nicely as well, and they're all super pigmented. Next we have the Laura Lee Los Angeles Party Animal palette. These eyeshadows just didn't blend out as nice as some of my other colorful eyeshadows do. Also find that the pink shade and the purple shade have a lot of glitter fallout throughout the day. So just too many negatives and I don't reach for it enough, so I'm going to pass it on to someone else. Up next we have the Butter London Natural Goddess eyeshadow palette. I actually haven't used this on the eyes, but just from swatching it, all of these shimmer shades, like, hello, look at that reflect. All of these shades are very soft and buttery. Even these matte shades over here are pretty nice as well. But personally, there's just not enough colors in here that I would use, and so for that reason, I'm going to be passing this on to someone else. I also got this in my BoxyCharm. Next, we have these Wet n Wild eyeshadow palettes. I will say that these powders are a little bit dusty, and they do have quite a bit of fallout. However, they do blend out very nicely on the skin, and all of these, like, shimmer shades are very shimmery and gleaming as well, so it's a pretty nice overall palette, especially for the price. I think they're like $4. I would recommend these. Also, like, if you don't know what eye look you want to go for, there are a couple options on the back, so you can definitely try those out if you would like. Same goes for this one. I actually like to use these in conjunction with each other. This one is the Not a Basic Peach palette. I'm going to be hanging on to these just because they are my most affordable eyeshadow palettes, and I want to be able to reference them in the future if needed. Up next we have the Ace Beauty Slice of Paradise palette. Look at these colors. I have done a video on this palette. I absolutely love this palette. These purples are very nice. The blues are very nice. Honestly, all of them are very nice. They blend out very nicely. This is a great option if you're looking for an overall colorful palette. Absolutely love this palette, so I'm definitely going to be keeping this one in my collection. Up next, we have the Makeup Geek Power Pigments. I'm going to be hanging on to these just because these are actually only Makeup Geek eyeshadows that I have. However, I didn't feel like we needed 3 pink shades when we came out with the rainbow collection, you know what I mean? The only con that I do have is this yellow. It's just not like bright enough for a yellow that I would personally use. So I would definitely like to see a brighter yellow shade for Makeup Geek in these power pigments for sure. Alright y'all, let's go ahead and get into the controversial palettes here. I know a lot of people had some issues with these eyeshadow palettes, but personally all of these blended out very nicely on my skin. Maybe it's just my eyelids, but personally, I didn't have any issues out of these eyeshadows. I know some people did have some patchiness, etc., but for me, I did not. Honestly, I really liked these eyeshadows. They blended out nicely on the skin for me. I know not everyone had that experience, but for me personally, these eyeshadows worked great. I didn't have any patchiness, didn't have any places that were unblended. I have used them quite a lot. However, I don't really use them as much anymore since I've gotten some newer palettes and palettes that I just prefer over these ones. So I am probably going to be passing these along, but I think I have someone in mind that I am going to be passing these on to. So I will keep them for now and give them away later. Up next we have the Jaclyn Hill eyeshadow palette. This was actually my first ever eyeshadow palette that I ever purchased. And even though I don't really reach for it a lot today, I am still going to keep it for the nostalgia's sake for myself personally. Honestly, all of these eyeshadows blend out very nicely on the skin. So if you're looking for a neutral palette that has a lot of shades and it has a couple pops of color as well, this will be a great go-to. I know Jaclyn Hill isn't in the brightest light at the moment, but it is a great palette regardless of your thoughts on Jaclyn Hill. Up next we have the Sosu X Kaylee Urban Bible palette. I absolutely love this palette. Like, look at this packaging. It looks so sleek and like urban, which hence the name, but it comes with a pretty decent size mirror, and look at these shades. Like, hello? This palette absolutely, like, speaks to me. I 100% feel like this is Kaylee in a palette. You know, some people come out with eyeshadow palettes and you're like, I mean, I guess. I feel like this is absolutely her style in a palette. Like the whole concept of the packaging, the names, etc. And I absolutely love the pigmentation of all these shadows. These brown shades are really nice as well. I personally keep this in my everyday makeup bag and for on the go and traveling and such as well. I actually reached for this one over my Soft Glam palette just because I feel like these brown shades are more rich than those ones. And it also gives me some options of color, so I kind of have it all in one palette for on-the-go purposes. So this is probably my #1 rated eyeshadow palette. I absolutely love this. Up next we have the Morphe X James Charles palette. I feel like this would be a great palette for a beginner makeup artist. It's got all of your eyeshadows from pinks to yellows, everything in between, and you have plenty of neutrals as well. I've used this quite a bit, but honestly the last like 4 or 5 months I've just used this as a mouse pad for my laptop versus like an eyeshadow palette. So for that reason I'm going to be passing it on to someone else. I will say that these eyeshadows are great, very blendable on the skin. Just be careful with some of the pink shades, they will stain you. Alright, last but not least, these are my certified palettes. I have the Dynasty palette right here. Got a row right here of shimmer shades, and then the other 2 rows are matte shades. Honestly, the pigmentation of this eyeshadow palette, as well as the other 2 that I'm going to show you, is literally unreal. All of these eyeshadows blend out very nicely on the skin. They're super buttery as well. All of these shimmer shades are literally beaming, like, hi, how are ya? Moving on to the Destiny palette. This is one of my personal favorite palettes. You have your nice array of brown tones to do like a brown smoky eye, etc. You also have your nice colorful shades as well. I know right now it looks a little crazy, but honestly, once you cover up that back row, like, look at that. That's like a dream in an eyeshadow palette, for me anyway. These red shades are very nice, very blendable as well. This shade right here, I like to cut my crease with this. Like, hi, look at that. This will go with any of these eyeshadows. This black down here is pretty great as well. I will say it's more of a gray black, but I actually prefer that in this palette because when blending out with any of these shades, you're not going to get too much pigmentation and you're not going to end up with a black eye. And last but not least, we have the Certified Tropical Wonders palette. Look at this artwork. Like, probably my favorite artwork on an eyeshadow palette yet. This is what it looks like on the inside. This is one of my personal favorite eyeshadow palettes as well. Just like these 2 palettes, this palette is very nice and blendable and has a lot of color payoff as well. I really like when palettes have both a white and a black because it honestly gives you a whole nother color range of this palette. These, as well as the Urban Bible palette, are honestly my favorite, and I could honestly just keep these 4 eyeshadows and literally not need another eyeshadow ever. Alright guys, these are all the products that I'm decluttering from my collection. It felt really good just to sit down and go through my makeup collection and pick out the things that I personally would like to keep and that I use frequently, and also get rid of the things that I'm not using and not showing enough love to. That way I can pass those on to other people. That way these can be loved. So hopefully all of these products will find a good home and they will be loved more than I can love them, at least. I'm sure you guys at home know that when things are cluttered, you kind of just want to avoid that space altogether, and that's kind of where I was feeling with my makeup collection as well. So that's why I wanted to just go through, do a little spring cleaning, and get out the things that I personally am not using anymore. So yeah, I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe down below. And I'll see you guys next week with another new video. Bye guys.